Looks like we're on the air.
All right.
Everybody should. All right, everybody. Hi, this is Helcarex here, and welcome to the Musty Wargamers show. And in this episode, with Palmer and special guest Adam Smasher from Tabletop Minions. Welcome, Adam, to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And tonight, we have Adam on because he has his new app that is for gaming. And tonight, while he's doing this, I'm going to actually try to download this thing and figure out at the same time as you talk about how to go through the steps and what's the app for and how it got started and all that.
Sure.
And Palmer, you have anything you want to say real quick?
No, just thanks to Adam for coming on the show. Interested to hear about his app and asking him other questions as well. And then we are going to go into, Adam's going to stay and he's going to join us for our regular topics that we chat about on the show, which will be awesome.
All right. Okay, Adam, tell us a little bit about yourself in case there's anybody watching our show that doesn't know you, which is probably improbable, but...
well, no, I not necessarily. I have a YouTube channel called Tabletop Minions. I've been doing for actually just shy of 5 years. I've got. I thought that my 5-year anniversary was March 1st, but it's actually February 27th, so it's come up real quick. But I do a video every Friday and talk about different things. Sometimes they're tutorials, sometimes they're more motivational, sometimes they're more philosophical almost, but all related to the hobby and gaming. And I have a tendency to skew a little bit more painting and that kind of stuff and a little bit less. I'm not a very good gamer. I'm not a strategic gamer. I'm not a tournament player. So I like to talk more about the hobby stuff. Over the last several years, I have really sort of changed the focus of my channel to really start to actually kind of target or talk to the new players, the people coming into the hobby. You know, I want to get more people into the hobby. I think it's a good hobby for people to have if they're interested. I think that it can be meditative, you know, the actual just sitting there and working on stuff. I see both of you have got a lot of stuff in the background, so you're obviously both pretty strong hobbyists. And I think that that's important. I think it's meditative to sit down and spend the time and listen to, you know, music or podcasts or, you know, YouTube channels or whatever, and work on your stuff with your hands, you know, working with your hands. I think people are going to, over the next several years, really start to realize that kind of stuff is really good for people's mental health. So that's one of the big reasons why I want to get more people into the hobby. Also, I just want more people to play with. That's always fun too. And talk with about the hobby in general. So yeah, that's what I've been doing, and it's been going well. I also kind of pride myself to some degree on doing, you know, a pretty decent broadcast generally. That's kind of why I really started initially, was because I wanted to learn video, producing. So I figured I should apply it to a hobby, and I've been a wargamer for a long time. So that's what I did, and here we are.
Okay. You originally did stuff for like Beast of War, didn't you, at one time?
Yeah, back in I started with Beast of War in 2010 actually, and I was just basically kind of a U.S. correspondent. So I would go to Gen Con and Adepticon and report from both of those conventions, talk to a lot of companies and game designers and all kinds of stuff like that, and just basically do reporting from those types of conventions. I did actually start to also do some unboxings and things like that in my basement, and then send them all the footage, and they would do the editing and all that jazz. And great guys. I really, liked working with them. It was a lot of fun. But I wanted, like I said, I wanted to start doing my own editing, and I wanted to start doing my own content, everything like that. So I figured it would be best I felt it would be like a conflict of interest if I was like working for them, but also doing my own thing at the time. That's just the way I looked at it. So, yeah, I started, like I said, the first video was on the 27th of February, it looks like, 2013. So, but I worked with them for about 2.5 years.
I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. The first video I ever put up was from Gen Con, of the parades that always go on, was it Saturday?
The cosplay,
yeah, everybody's dressed up, and that was the first time I ever put a video out with my phone and uploaded it So I was like, you know, maybe I could do this. I'm not sure if I could. And so I understand that eventually that you moved from Beast of War doing their videos, and then you start doing your own thing. And which is transitioning on to why you're on tonight is that what led you to want to create this app that we can use on our phones for connecting with individuals across the internet?
Yeah, so actually, it wasn't my initial idea. It was the company that I work for, which is this. We're a small little company. There's 6 of us, and we make apps for clients. So business to business stuff, and insurance companies and manufacturing and things like that. So we make apps for these companies. Sometimes they come to us with a Android app, they don't know how to do Apple, or they come to us with Apple app and they don't know how to do Android, or they just don't have an app at all. And so we do client work. But like I said, we're a small company. There's 6 of us, and we're all tabletop gamers. So the people in the company had beforehand come up with this concept sometime in, I want to say, maybe late 2015, but more likely early 2016. And I started working with them. I got a job with them in July of 2016. Part of why I got the job was because of my YouTube channel and my background with this type of stuff and the gaming, and also the marketing and the video production and all that kind of stuff. So and also I'm a designer. I mean, I've been working as a web designer, digital designer, user experience, user interface, that kind of stuff for years, like more than 20 now. And so they needed a designer, but they needed somebody who had background in tabletop gaming and that kind of stuff, and also video production and whatever. So I started working with them, like I said, July 2016. And then we started, they had already started some research, market research and stuff, but I continued it through, 2016, late 2016 programming actually started after a lot of different mock-ups and wireframes and all that technical stuff, trying to figure out, like, well, when you click here, where does it go? What happens when you do this, and when you do that kind of stuff. So programming took about a year, but only because, it's a company that has a day job as well. You know what I mean? We've got clients and they pay the bills, which is great. But 2017, we had a lot of work, which is a good problem to have, but it slowed down production of the app a bit. And so we launched it just a couple days before Christmas 2017. So today's the 22nd. So I think today is actually the 2-month anniversary of when we've launched it. So it's only been out 2 months. We launched it and have been a little quiet about it. We wanted to sort of kick the tires and make sure everything was running right, and look at server loads and things like that, and go through all those things. And now we're starting to up the marketing strategy, and we're talking to podcasts and YouTube channels and all that kind of stuff. We're going to the Game Manufacturers Association GAMA, the big trade show in Reno, in 3 weeks or whatever. It's on the 12th of March. So we've got a booth there. And that trade show it's very different than like Gen Con or anything like that. The booths are all, game manufacturers and game sellers, but they're also service industries that work with game stores and distributors and all kinds of stuff like that. And the people walking the aisles are not your average gamers. They're all store owners. So it's nearly 800 store owners walking the aisles looking at these different booths. So that's going to be, I think, really good for us as well. And then after that, I've got Adepticon, like seriously, like 2 days after I get back, I'm heading out to Adepticon. So yeah, we're really starting to up the marketing and doing a lot more stuff, a lot more interviews, a lot more talk, because we want to spread the word. So the app it's for, like I said, Android or iOS, and it is designed to help connect tabletop gamers. One of the biggest problems with tabletop games to some degree is the fact that it's difficult to find other people to play with. When you play video games, you push the button that says multiplayer, and then it hooks you up with some people who knows where, and you play a game. With tabletop gaming, you need to find people who live probably sort of near you, and you would need to, kind of go down that road, find people who play the same games you do, same types of games, same genre, all that kind of stuff. And then you can kind of hopefully the plan is then you make some friends with these people that you game with. You know, we've all had friends that we've made through gaming. If we can have more games and meet more people, that just seems like more friends. So yeah, right now there's three main pillars in the app. There's the game finder, and that's very event based. So it's all about trying to figure out, like, you know, find, like, stores can post events, people can post events. I was on a Malifaux podcast last night, and one of the hosts is a henchman for Weird, so that's kind of like one of their demo team people. And he said that he started using it at their local shop when he's doing demos and letting people know about that kind of stuff. But the game finder is something there's a filter to it, so you can say I only want to see stuff within 50 miles of where I am, or I'll say maybe I'll travel 250 miles and I want to see what's going on. And then you can also filter by genre. There's the 4 main genres, which is board games, collectible card games, role-playing games, and the stuff that we're interested in, which is basically, you know, tabletop war games. You can decide, let's say you don't play Magic at all, or any of those types of games, you can filter it out so you don't see Friday Night Magic and all that kind of stuff filling up your feed. You'll just see the stuff that's more, you know, interesting to you. So yeah, you've got the ability to kind of filter what you're going to see and you know, reduce some of the chaff if there's some in there that you don't necessarily want to check out because you don't play that type of game. But that's the game finder. The second kind of pillar of the whole thing is the looking for players. So if game finder is all about a date and a time and a place, looking for players is basically kind of almost like that 3x5 card stuck to the cork board, you know, at the back of the game store that says, hey, we're looking for you know, we need a new sorcerer for our Wednesday night, you know, D&D group, and you know, call Bob at, you know, this number. So it's a little bit, it's not about a certain time or a certain date or anything like that. It's about a person saying, I want to play this game or this game or this game, and I work second shift, so we need to keep that into consideration, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I make a really good cheese dip, you know, so I can bring that along or whatever. And they can put that in the description, and then people can then send them messages through the app and say, you know, it's not a thing where you have to post your email address or anything like that. You send a message through the app and say, yeah, I'm also interested in Age of Sigmar, and I will bring, you know, Doritos or whatever, and then we'll use the cheese dip, and it'll be great. So that's been also very helpful because it can be a very it's for the people who want to reach out to people a little bit more. The event thing is more for people who are like, all right, I see there's an event at the store, I'll go check it out. But you don't have to immediately reach out to people and say, hey, do you want to get together and play a game? Other apps have tried to kind of do what we're doing right now, and they've been very person-centric. So it's very, you know, like, here's 12 gamers who live within 10 miles of you, why don't you make some friends? And that's not the way it should work. You know, you go to a convention, there's a program that says this game is being played at this table at 3 o'clock. So if you want to play that game, you go to that table. It's not just a big room of people standing around looking at each other going, well, do you want to play a game? You know, there's a schedule and there's reasons, and you're getting together because of the game and not just because you're gamers. So that's the event thing. The looking for players thing is putting yourself out there a little bit and saying, hey, I'm looking for someone to play Car Wars or Traveler or Ogre, you know, because I'm old, you know, or whatever. And I'm interested in finding other people who are also interested in that game. And then the third big pillar is the store finder. So the store finder right now, the database is, we just surpassed 5,900 stores worldwide. So I just had a guy recently actually send me a message and say, hey, I was using the app and I was driving from Eastern Tennessee to Missouri for business. And he's like, I pulled over at 3 different game stores that I would have not been able to figure out about at all, because it's very difficult to find those things. You're going hopping back and forth between Google and Facebook and this and that and the other thing. So yeah, we've got 59, I think it was 5,908 maybe earlier today, stores worldwide. So people can find their local stores, and the stores can contact us for free, and we will give them access to their account, you know, to their store in the database, so they can put in their hours, they can put in a description, they can put in a picture of the store, and then they can post events. And when the events end up in the listing, they have this extra little line that a normal person's events don't have, that it says event hosted by such and such store. So it kind of stands out as a little bit more official. But yeah, those are the big 3 pillars right now. A fourth one is coming mid-March. Actually, we're going to have it done before we go to Gamma, and that's going to be groups and clubs. So it's not as big of a deal over here in America, but over in the UK, especially amongst wargamers, clubs are like, that's the big thing, because you don't generally play at stores because they have a tendency to be kind of small. So people get together and start clubs and, you know, rent some sort of space, or they play maybe in a church basement, or maybe they even rent like an old store that hasn't been used in a long time, and then they have like specific nights that they're kind of open for club play, and you have to pay dues and all that kind of stuff. And we wanted to help support that. Plus, there's a lot of board gaming clubs and groups in America as well that are always looking to be able to kind of expand their ranks and find more people to play. So we also want to help kind of that thing as well. So yeah, that's the next new big feature that's actually coming. Like I said, we should have it done before we go to Gamma. That's the plan. So mid-March is when it's going to launch.
That's interesting. I actually, when first hearing about this, was a little misunderstood, and I thought it had more to do with like people that are traveling to like find games, like when you're kind of going somewhere, you know, and because you can do that, it sounds like. But actually, the local part sounds to me like really useful, at least for me in my area, because I know when I started gaming initially in this city, I didn't know, not only did I not know what was going on at various different stores throughout the city, but even now things start and stop, and I don't really even know, right? Because there's a number of places in my city to play, and so I could really see that being useful at a local level.
Yeah, and the thing is that what we're finding more and more as we talk to more and more stores, and we did a bunch of interviews with store owners at the beginning of 2017. You know, we're all gamers. This is our app, we like to think of it as it's made by gamers for gamers, but none of us is a store owner. So we wanted to make sure that we talked to a bunch of store owners and got their opinions and told them what we were planning on doing and what they thought about it and what like kind of features they'd look for. And the thing that we keep hearing from store owners is, you know, I'm on Facebook, and when I put an event on Facebook, let's say my store has 1,000 likes, maybe 100 people see it. And that's just Facebook these days. Facebook is throttling, you know, you may have 50 likes. Well, that means that you're going to be seen by maybe 10 people. And, you know, Facebook is constantly throttling what they're showing these days. And then immediately following that up with, well, hey, if you want to boost this event, you know, $20, and we'll get it to more of the people who actually said that they want to see your stuff. And that's their business model. And it's valid, but we generally don't kind of like it. And a lot of stores are ticked about it because they're like, I have 1,000 people that like my store. Why do so few of them see what I'm trying to post? So that's why we want to do this, because we're not using algorithms. We're not doing any kind of throttling. As long as the user's filters match up with your event, meaning like if it's an RPG event and they don't like RPGs and they've got that filter turned off, well, then they won't see it. But you don't necessarily want to show it to someone who's not interested anyway, right? So as long as the radius is set, you know, to within your event and the filter matches up, if they're looking at the lists, they'll see it. We don't block anything like that. And that's really, I think, the more important thing to some degree about the local. The traveling is also very useful. Like I said, I just had someone tell me that they found some extra game stores because they were able to use the app to find them as they were traveling from Tennessee to Missouri. Right. But even people I've talked to who are like, I've showed them the app and I've asked them. I was at LVO, the Las Vegas Open, back in January, and I was showing people the app there and things like that. And I'd ask them like their city name or their postal code or their zip code, and then I would show them the stores, and they'd be like, and a couple of times people were like, I didn't even know that store was open. I didn't know. And then, you know, and then I would be like, well, gosh, I wonder if it's actually closed or not. And then we looked it up and like, oh yeah, no, that store's been there for 6 months or something, and that person didn't know about it. So, you know, we just figure it's a good hub to have everything all together, so that, you know, using Facebook for gaming groups, first of all, trying to find the right gaming group within Facebook is a very difficult interface. Secondly, you're going through your normal feed of Facebook stuff, and, you know, you let's say there's a lot of people I've talked to who just want to use Facebook because of the gaming aspect, because that's how they keep track of their people. And so the trick is that as they scroll through, you know, it's like, okay, this is gaming related. This is gaming related. This is a meme that my aunt posted. You know, this is, you know, something that grandma said. And it's just, I think we're trying to make it so that stuff can be separate, and that you can have this one app you go to when you're interested in finding out about gaming stuff. And if you want to keep up with your friends and family, well, then go over and head over to Facebook, and then hopefully you can keep those things a little bit more apart.
Right. Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
All right. question I have is, how do you find this?
Okay, so you can go to either the Apple App Store or the Android. It's Google Play Store is what it's called. And if you do a search for the word GameFor, GameFor, you are more likely to find it. But if you really want to find it, I would search for the word GameFor, GameFor, and the word tabletop, like put a space in between them. That will generally get, because there's so many apps on both those app stores that it's very difficult. It's almost like Google. You know how it's like difficult to make the first page of Google? That's the same thing that's going on these days with the App Store. And since we just started like 2 months ago, we haven't grown, climbed as if you just type in GameFor, sometimes you don't find us. But if you type in GameFor Tabletop, because it's the title in the app stores is actually GameFor Tabletop Event Finder or Tabletop Game Events or something like that. So that word should help you find it a bit quicker.
Okay, I just typed it in my phone.
Yep.
And it's GameFor, find local game events and players.
Yep, that's us. But another thing you can do is if that doesn't work, you can go to the website, which is www.iamgamefor. So IAM Gamefor. And again, it's GameFor.com. And we've got links to both of the app stores there too. So you can just take those direct if you want.
Okay. Something I just thought of, Adam, kind of basic question, but are there some sort of basic requirements to post an event or to try to schedule a game with someone? Does it have to be at a registered store location within the system? Or is it like, can people actually invite you through this thing over their house? Like, or just set up an event at the mall in the food court, is that like, how does that work?
Currently, you can only post official events. Like if you're going to put an event in the Game Finder, you can only have the events happen at a store that's in the database. We did that predominantly early on because of safety and privacy concerns. So we're very, I'm specifically very interested in keeping track of all of that kind of stuff, privacy and safety and all that. So that's why we made the choice early on that you can only have events at stores. Now, if you're doing the looking for player thing where, you put it out there and a person sends you a message through the app, you can technically get together and play wherever you want to play. So if you want to, invite a stranger to your house, that's your choice. I wouldn't suggest it. I'd say, well, maybe we should meet at the local store or perhaps at a cafe or a library or wherever you play around your area. We're going to be adding functionality directly after groups and clubs. We're going to be adding the ability to do a friends list. Part of what has to happen for that friends list is we also have to have the ability to report people and block people. When we do that, we are then going to make it available for people to be able to host events or post events, let's say, that can be pretty much anywhere. But the free tier, for users won't support that. So if you're just a free user, you'll still have to have stuff happen at a store or, basically. But if you want to help support the app and pay a subscription fee, it's just a yearly subscription fee. We currently think we're pricing it at $12 a year. One of the many benefits that will be in that, besides just supporting the app and helping, keep it alive, is that you will be able to post events at places that are not particularly game stores. Clubs will have that same ability as well if they're subscribers. But we've made everything in the app free. Stores can post their events and do all that stuff for free. People can post events and use the app for free. And groups and clubs can be, when that launches, will be able to be also free as well. But we are going to, as part of the, keeping the servers running and keeping people, in business, we're going to have support tiers for each of those three things: stores, users, and clubs. And they will give added benefits and stuff just besides, actually supporting the app. So yeah, we've been thinking about that because we really don't want people to get themselves into trouble by going to someone's house and things like that. We've been thinking about that since the get, honestly.
Well, no, it's funny that you say that. I think it seems wise, actually, and kind of keeping it at the store level first and just not jumping right in, because you hear stuff on the news about like these delivery services and like all kinds of stuff where people show up through an app and bad things happen, and then all of a sudden you're getting calls.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and so we were very conscious of that from the from the start. So yeah, that's why we've got that set. And we've had people ask us and say, well, we don't play at my local store, we only play at the cafe. And we're like, well, that, like I said, that's coming, but right now we're only doing it this way. So yeah.
And I would imagine that somebody that's not like technically selling miniatures, if let's say it was a social cafe, like that owner, if they wanted to support gaming at their place, could sign up for this, right, as a location if they wanted to. Probably.
I guess we haven't thought about that directly because everything's currently listed to the store finder. So the idea behind the store finder is that if you go to a store, you expect to be able to buy games and stuff there, whether it's board games or Magic or miniatures or whatever. Because again, this goes for all kinds of stuff. But we may have down in the road maybe some sort of classification, whereas like this shows up as a play space, but they don't sell games there. That's a possibility as well. Right. So yeah, that's a good point.
All right. While Palmer was talking for just a couple seconds,
sure,
I typed this in and then said, "Do you wish to install this?" And I hit install. It uploaded in less than 30 seconds.
It's not a very large app for the main. Like a lot of apps are humongous and take forever. Ours, we've kept it. We've actively tried to keep it very small as a small download.
And it just says here, enter an email address, create a password, and I'm new, sign me up. So basically, you just have to put a basic information in to get going.
Yeah, there's also a button down the bottom that says you can look around as guest as well. So if you want to see like what's going on inside the app, you don't have to sign up right away. But if you want to say you're going to an event or send someone a message or post an event or any of those things, it'll bring you back to the sign up page so that you can start an account. But like I said, the account sign up and all that stuff is free. So,
okay.
But we wanted to have a way for people to kind of get in and poke around a little bit without having to immediately like start putting in a password and all that stuff. But we just wanted to, because we figured it would be like I don't want to say a teaser, but it'll show you like, well, this is what's going on inside here, and this is what we're trying to do. So, and then it usually just asks you either to turn on location services so it knows where you are, or if you don't like that. And I generally don't usually use location services. I feel like it drains the battery maybe. Then it just asks you for a zip code or a postal code or just a name of a city, and then it will show you the stuff around there.
Neat.
Okay.
Yeah. And right now our main goal is basically just trying to get more people into the app. Like I said, we've got over 5,000 stores in our almost 6,000 stores. We've got 5,900 plus stores in the store database, but those we were able to put in ourselves by going and, we did a lot of research and all over the internet and the whole deal. But since we've launched, we've still put in we had, I don't know, something like 50 some people reach out to us and say, hey, you didn't catch this store, you didn't catch that store, so we're still adding to that database. Okay. As far as the events, those are user submitted. So we can't go around and try to figure out like what every store's events are. So it's up to the stores to post the stuff. It's up to people to post the stuff. So because it's only been up 2 months, there's a good chance, depending on where you are, you might not find any events very close by. And that's part of why we're starting this marketing push, to get more and more people involved, because it'll just put more stuff in so more people can find each other and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I just looked up in mine, and for local events in the area, nothing.
Yeah, if you change the filter down the bottom, you can expand it out, and you'll probably just hopefully start to find some stuff.
Yeah. So tonight, when I'm kicking back and relaxing and finishing my scotch over here, I'll figure this all out and put some more information in and get her going.
Yeah, and then definitely take a look at the looking for players page, and once you've got your account and everything all set up, you can go in there and say that hey, I'm looking to play this and this and this, and I'm usually free on weekends or whatever the deal is, and then put it in there, and then hopefully eventually, as more people start to join, you'll have people reach out. We've been hearing already from plenty of people who've been telling us that they've been putting in LFPs, looking for players, and they've been getting results. We're finding right now there's a decent amount of action in Germany. We're seeing more people in Poland. We see a surprising amount of traffic from Brazil. And obviously, like America, we're getting more. And I, being in the middle kind of part of Wisconsin, we're talking directly to all of our local stores, because there's a lot of gaming here and there's a lot of local stores. So we've been talking directly to our stores to try to get them involved and to get them verified. Like I said, verification is free, and it's a real quick and simple thing, and then it allows them to be able to put in store events, put in their hours, excuse me, description of their store, like the stuff that they sell and that kind of jazz, pictures.
Okay. Yeah, I could see this start to grow exponentially, because right now, very few people know or anything about this. And as more people find out about it, it just starts to grow on a social level.
Well, in gaming, there's this phenomenon of what's known as sometimes the alpha gamer, or sometimes they're known as the instigators. And you've probably seen this amongst your gaming people before. There's like this one person who's just like, oh, there's this new game, it's really cool, and I'm going to start playing it. And then everybody else is kind of like, okay. And then you see it more in wargaming, because each person kind of needs their own army. But you also see it in games like, sometimes collectible card games as well. With board gaming, like, I can buy the board game and then bring it over to your house and then we can all play. Or I can buy the board game. Not everybody necessarily has to be invested in the same way. But you do definitely in wargaming. I know there's like one person in the group who's like, hey, I'm going to try out Bolt Action. And everyone's like, well, all right, I guess I'll take a look at it. And so when we get those people to sign up in GameFor and see the use in it, then they're going to tell their friends. And if anybody's listening here and you want to help grow it in your area, tell your friends and tell your local stores. Like I said, we're going to be talking to a lot of local stores at the Gamma trade show in 3 weeks. But anytime that we can help spread the word, it's just going to make the network more important. I mentioned this a couple nights ago on some other recording I was doing, but the guy with the first fax machine, he had nobody to fax, so it wasn't really useful. It was only after there were a lot more fax machines that it actually became a useful network. And this is sort of the same thing. When we first launched it on the first day, there was nothing, and so as more and more people get into it, it will just make it more and more worthwhile, because it'll become, I mean, we would love it to become sort of kind of a de facto sort of like, this is the way that people communicate in tabletop gaming amongst groups, amongst, new players, amongst stores. We believe in stores, and that's why we also push a lot on the stores and trying to get their events and their information out there, and just get their information out to people who are looking to stop by the store and maybe buy something. So
makes a lot of sense.
Social media is like a game fabric, where one thread of individuals, like Palmer and I might be one thread, but you get enough individuals together, you start to create a fabric together, which actually creates something out of it. And I see that's where we're going. And it's like, we're still kind of in infancy, I believe, with like using YouTube. As gamers, absolutely. There's a lot of us that are, it's like, for just even myself, just finally getting around into using YouTube as a tool of getting out there and creating a larger group of individuals to interact with. And I see this right here as a way of, because there may be Joe and Jerry and them sitting on the south side of town over here that play the same exact games I do, but we've never met. Yeah.
I was talking with one of the two gentlemen who run the main gentleman who run Adepticon, and he and I were having a conversation on the phone earlier, or sometime last year, and he said that it's in the Chicago area. He says that he runs into 40K players in the Chicago area at stores who've never heard of Adepticon, and they've been doing it for 15 years. And he's like, this is exactly for your people. You live 20 minutes away. How is it that we've missed you all of these years and you don't know about it? I mean, you can think that you're marketing very, very well and getting the word out to everybody, and you can think that, but until you kind of reach out electronically through this kind of social media stuff, all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, you guys have been playing this game for 3 years in your basement amongst 6 of you, and you didn't know that we played at this shop or anything like that. I mean, Wizards of the Coast has done a bunch of research, and they believe that of all the people who buy Magic, 95% of the people who buy Magic never actually play in the stores. So when you see all that Friday night Magic and the Thursday night standard showdowns that they're starting to push now and all that kind of stuff, that's a evidently very small amount of the people who actually buy the cards. There's a lot of people who come into stores, buy the cards, and then go home and play with their friends and never play at the shops. But yet when I walk into the shops, it's always a lot of Magic players. And that's such a small percentage, as it turns out. I was at this this distributor conference, when the guy from Wizards mentioned that, and this distributor conference, all the people who attend are all store owners. A friend of mine's a store owner, and so I go along with him, so he's not there by himself. And there was an audible gasp when he said 95% of the people never actually even come to play at the stores, and they were like, so yeah. And he said, yeah, we've been doing market research for 20 years, and we're pretty sure that number's accurate. So again, ships passing in the night, and so what we want to do is be the light, hopefully, to create a phrase, the light in the darkness for gamers or something like that.
Just think of how much of the market you still have to tap into. When you're the store owner and you hear that, you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the benefits that we're going to give to the store owners when they become subscribers, if they choose to become a subscriber, and not just verified. Like I said, verified's free, but if they want to pay to be a subscriber, one of the benefits that they're going to get is analytics. So they'll be able to say, okay, how many GameFor users are within 50 miles of my store? And then it'll say, okay, there's, maybe there's 205. Okay, cool. Amongst those 205, what's the favorite genre? Like, oh, really? Role-playing. I had no idea. I should probably buy more role-playing stuff for my store. It's data that you can't really get from anyplace else, and we want to be able to, supply that to the people who the stores that support the app. So that's also where we've got the hooks in the database to make a lot of that stuff happening, and we're just kind of working that in. And when we start the store subscription service stuff, which is not currently running yet, but when we do open it, that the analytics will be a big part of it, and that'll be one of the things that hopefully helps the stores make better decisions about what to buy and what kind of events to have and all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, I could see this being very handy. Is the more individuals that get involved into it, you're talking about the analytics, and as a store owner, being able to, like, oh my God, it's like when you're talking about 95%, like I remember when I played Magic, that maybe once a month or twice a month, I might go to the store one night, but we played 3-4 times a week at home or amongst our group. Yeah. And it's the same way with our tabletop gaming, is that we play maybe, if we're lucky, once a month at the store. And it's because I'm pushing for us to go play at the store to get more coverage. And because a number of times I played a game at our store and someone walks up and was like, oh, you're playing Dystopian Wars? Oh, I haven't seen anybody play that in years. It was like, yeah. And it's like, well, I play. It's like, well, you want to join? Exactly. It's a way. And this app, I could see helping out greatly in finding like-minded individuals that want to get out there. And
that example you gave, that's a great example, but it's lucky. You know what I mean? You're lucky that person came into the store at the same time you guys were there, and then they played the same game that you guys play, which is not the big game in the industry or whatever. Dystopian Wars being kind of a smaller, kind of a more niche thing. And that's super lucky when you find somebody and then you can join into the group. Now, if we could just have everybody in that local area, if they're on the app, they could just type in Dystopian Wars into the looking for players and find somebody else who's like, oh yeah, we do this. Then it's not luck anymore. It's just data. It's not hoping to be at the right place at the right time. It's just they're looking through the app to try to find, well, does anybody play Car Wars anymore? Oh gosh, there's 2 guys over here that play, that kind of stuff. And that's just going to make it, I hope, easier for everybody to be able to find the games. I mean, we've got a slogan right now, which I'm trying to remember what it is. I think it's more players, more stores, more events, more games, or more gaming. I just put it on a big banner that we're taking with us to Reno. But yeah, so that's really the goal, is more gaming, and being able to connect people more easily and more quickly is kind of the thing, the in to making that happen. So yeah, that's pretty much everything in a nutshell. Like I said, if you're interested, if your listeners are interested, your viewers, just www.iamgamefor.com. So it's IAMGAMEFOR.com. And you can find links to both of the versions, whether it's Android or iOS. We've been updating it really regularly. Like I said, our next big feature is going to be mid-March, but we probably are going to do some other updates along the way, just little bug fixes and things like that. We've got of the 6 of us, there's me, there's 1 designer, and then there's 5 developers. So we're on board. You know, we've this is something that we do. We you know, this is our day job, is making apps like this. But usually we're making for other clients, and we wanted to make one for ourselves and for gamers, because we're all gamers. So we've got a lot of experience. I mean, like I said, I've been doing design for more than 20 years, and the two lead, you know, senior developers are 20 years each as well. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's one thing I'm going to do tonight. Everybody, go find out GameFor. Download it on your phone, fill it out, get it in, and start finding other people to play, because there's nothing worse than sitting around. It's like, well, I got all this free time. I was like, I want to play a game, but my friends don't want to this week. With the phone app, you can get out there and find individuals to play with. That's the way I could say it. All right.
Awesome. So maybe we'll move on to one of our main topics of the show, that of our discussion points. And I'm kind of interested in Adam's opinion on this one. I think this one's good because he's into the hobby stuff. He talks a lot about painting and hobbying on his channel. And you might have talked about this on your channel. I've seen your videos. I don't remember seeing one. But tonight we talk a little bit about realistic painting styles versus more cartoon-like painting styles. I know there are lots of different kinds of painting styles out there. Sometimes you can categorize them more on the realistic side versus more going for something maybe with more contrast that pops a bit different, cartoon style. I see them. I believe that both actually can have tremendous amounts of difficulty and levels of skill, whichever one you choose. Sometimes we're more prone as individuals to being a little better at one versus the other. And it may even be that we might play more historical versus more of a fantasy element, and we might kind of speed up on one scale versus the other. I personally fell in more with the realistic painting style. Even when I was doing 40K, I was trying to go for more gritty look, lots of washes and depth and like realism. And I found I wasn't as good at the cartoon stuff. I didn't feel as comfortable making things pop and some of the beautiful color transitions and things like that. And so I graduated that way. And then I've slowly over the years moved some of my games and painting styles towards the cartoon-like and worked on those skills. And now I would say I do both depending on what I'm doing. And I like to try to improve on both. So what do you guys think? And as our special guest for the evening, we'll start with Adam.
Excuse me. Yeah, I think that I find myself generally painting more realistic style. I'd like to look at my miniatures. I know that one of the big goals of the more cartoony style is for the model to look like, you know, good from 3 feet away or 4 feet away or whatever. It reminds me a little bit of theater makeup. You know, if you've ever been to a play and you know that a friend is in, and then after the play they come down like and they're talking to you in the audience, and now that you're close up, the makeup looks really scary and weird, you know. But from the distance, it looked totally fine, and that's sort of the trick. Because I like to look at my models pretty close, you know, maybe a foot away or less. I generally have a tendency to paint them to be a little bit more realistic. Because of that, they maybe look a little bit more drab, you know, from a distance sitting on the table. But I generally enjoy them that way. I think, frankly, honestly, I think that the more slightly cartoony style is actually maybe a little bit more difficult, though, too. You know, being able to make those kind of transitions not look too jarring, but still high enough contrast. I think that takes a good deal more skill. It takes probably a good more time. I think that sometimes with realistic painting, you actually let the shadows be shadows. You know what I mean? Like you actually let the light in the room create a little bit more of the shadow. Whereas in the cartoony kind of more that style, you're like, well, you're painting in more of the shadows. And from what I've been told, there's some sort of rule of physics about why you want to accentuate the shadows in your paint job on the small items, whereas like a big, you know, like say statue, you wouldn't have to do that. It has something to do with the size of light photons or I don't know. I'm not a light scientist, but
you're
that
right,
kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. But that kind of thing is a thing that I think you have to do more when you do the cartoony style. And like I said, I generally like to stick with myself with the grittier style too. Like you'd mentioned, like I do still play 40K, and I like to have my guys always look like they've been in a fight. You know, and I don't. A lot of people, you know, paint them like they're at parade rest, and I want them to look like they've been in the mud and the grime and they've taken some shells. And that's just, to me, that's just visually more interesting, and it's more interesting physically for me to paint as well.
How about that's awesome. How about you, Rusty?
Well, I since I started off in kind of the historicals to begin with, I started off trying, like Napoleonics, trying to get it to be as realistic as possible, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. And then got into like BattleTech and then 40K. And when I always looked at BattleTech and 40K when you're painting stuff, is that is kind of a cartoon, because that is sci-fi. If you remember like Rogue Trader 2nd edition, how garish it was. You know, you look at through the old white dwarfs and everything, and you're like, wow. It's like, how do you gonna paint that? You know, and I still have like my orcs, they're big red bolters, and my orcs, or my Ultramarines that I had, you know, they're with the big red bolters and all that. There was nothing realistic about it. And it's like, man, it's like you're trying to make it as cartoony as possible, because that's the way they do it in the books.
Sure.
And those orcs looked great cartoony.
Yeah. So when you go back and you look at it, and then you look at the transition, let's say at Games Workshop, they started off as garish and cartoony as possible, and now they've gone to, like you have done, Adam, is that you make them as gritty as possible, realistic. And I'm surprised they haven't actually have the Marines running around now with camouflage. You know, you put enough mud effects on them, though, they become camouflaged. You know, you look at like an Imperial Fist. You know, he's bright yellow, and he's. But if you do it right, and you've got enough washes on there and grit and stuff, they actually gives that effect that he's kind of camouflaged. But I spent a lot of time, like right on my desk right here, I've got my leaning on, is I'm doing like Flames of War and Battle Group, you know, realistic. And I'm sitting now is like doing German infantry, and I'm painstakingly getting each little, on a 15 mil miniature, doing the web gear and each little cartridge bag and everything, doing that correct. And so you're going as realistic as possible, because from 2 inches away, it looks good.
Yeah.
Now, you sit back here from this distance, you really don't see it from across the table. But, you know, like you said, it's something that you just have to work on. And it's hard not to. I'm just thinking about large models. If I dig out my big Titans and stuff that I have, there's not a lot of depth into it. That the light itself creates the depth in the shading, because you have it's large enough that it creates its own shadows.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're doing it, you're not layering things out and making a transition to accentuate any false shadowing you may try looking at. So let's say if you really want to torture yourself, not using metallics, but try to create a metallic look without metallics, you're really working hard.
Yeah, non-metallic metallics. You see a lot of people who do it, and I don't think I'll ever even attempt it, because not only does it seem really difficult, but I've very rarely ever really enjoyed myself personally the look, you know, and it's a personal preference thing, don't get me wrong, but it's the non-metallic metallics generally just kind of turn me off a bit, and they do come across even more cartoony in my opinion. But I mean, they take an incredible amount of skill. Talking before about how, you know, the more cartoony style, for lack of a better word, takes a lot more skill. I believe that, and non-metallic metallics even way more. But I just prefer metallics, you know, because they give you that extra sheen and that extra kind of reflection. And I don't know, to me they look a bit more realistic. So that's kind of my interest area.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'd said that like for myself, I felt that it was harder for me to work on the cartoony style. But then I guess in the defense, and that's for me personally, that was where my transition went, like starting realistic and then trying to do more cartoony. Then I found that in the defense of the realistic guys out there that paint realistic, you can get to the point like where Rusty said, where you're painting very detailed, and you can take that realism to a point where all of a sudden you're defending how realistic it is, where the cartoony guys can say, well, it's not real, right? It's still like cartoony, like it's not meant to be real life. Yeah. And so there's an excuse there. And so like you can kind of look at it from both sides. Like they both can be very difficult, and you can take both to the extreme. I saw a video on YouTube once, and it was this amazing setup outside where so many people used natural light outside to do like just a little sitting diorama, and it was a realistic style painted miniatures. And I looked at it; it was 40K. Forge World models, and it looked real to me. It looked like real people. Like, and I was like, oh my God, the sun on it. I like the way they did that. It just looks so amazing. And so that really can be impressive. The one thing that I kind of, when thinking about this topic, came across my mind is what about realistic versus cartoony sculpting? And how does that affect your choice in how you paint? And I came to the conclusion kind of, you can actually take a cartoon-like model, and instead of choosing to paint a cartoon-like paint job, if you try to do more realistic painting, you can prevent it from being exactly like a Mario Brothers cartoon-like character, and kind of move it towards something that you can fit in a game that you have a bit more, maybe you want more realism. Or you can take a realistic model and paint it more cartoony to create pop in the way we've just been talking, and have in the way that because sculpting is also can be realistic versus cartoony. It also kind of has that design extremes, that it goes through. And so how you choose your paint job, whether it be cartoon or realistic on a sculpture that's either cartoon or realistic or somewhere in between, is interesting, because then you can change an effect and you can kind of increase it or decrease that effect on the sculpture, I think, which is interesting.
Yeah, I've looked at the Fantasy Flight game Rune Wars, and I've done a demo of it a couple of times, and it's not necessarily something that I'm interested in particularly playing, but I ended up with a copy of it at Adepticon because they put it in the swag bag last year. But the skeletons, the undead models that they've got in that game, I feel kind of ride a line between kind of cartoony sculpts and non, but I think a little bit more heavily on the cartoony. And I know that I like the sculpts. I think they're interesting, and I'm interested in trying to paint them. But I know that when I do, I'm going to probably have to do it a little bit cartoony, just to, at least in my mind, because I'm having a hard time trying to picture how they would look more realistic. I mean, maybe it's a deal where I kind of do some tests and see what I get up with, and if I finally discover what I want to do, then maybe I strip the other stuff and then start over. But yeah, I don't know. I get the feeling that there's a kind of a gateway game that was made by the guys who make Mercs, and it was called Myth. I don't know if you guys saw that. They had also kind of in that same sort of vein skeletons that were a little bit more cartoony. Like everything in that that game really followed Keith, his art style. He's the guy that did the majority of the artwork for Mercs and of course Myth as well. And he's got kind of an interesting, slightly more cartoony style, not anime, but something kind of really like I can just see it and immediately be like, oh, that's Keith. Like it's one of those things you just know. And really like it, and I bought a copy of it used someplace just because I kind of eventually want to like work on the skeletons, because I think again they're really kind of cool. So yeah, I think for me, if it was a cartoony model, I'm very highly likely to try to paint it cartoony.
keep it in the theme.
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah, I remember back in the 90s there was a company, Easy 8 Enterprises. They did Battleground World War II, and they made their infantry, because the individual, he did a lot of characters, he also illustrated a lot of stuff in the rule books and supplements, and he also did the sculpting, and he sculpted everything to have kind of that kind of a cartoon caricature type thing that was going on in it. And it was, at the time I was like painting all this and like, do I go with the way they have it illustrated, or do I just try to make it realistic? And it kind of, once you painted it realistic enough, it still had a slight cartoon effect to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually, I thought it looked better once you put some realism into it.
You can mix it up, and I think that can happen. I think like Infinity would be a good example, since we're kind of talking about the anime. Is like you could go and try to do the Corvus Belli stuff and really do the anime look, and it really suits it, because I think it looks very much like that in a lot of its product materials, and it would fit that cartoony look or get that pop look really well. But you might also say, like, I'd like to have them a lot more realistic looking, and you could try to paint a realistic paint job on them and really have a very different looking army. I think it would probably tone down that look.
No, I think you're right. I think it would help to tone down the kind of maybe overly anime style, if that's not what you're into, with the sculpts at least. Although their sculpts have changed over the last like 5 or 6 years, and they are becoming a little bit more. I feel like they're becoming a little bit more realistic to some degree. But yeah, I've seen some amazing paint jobs done with that stuff. I know that Sam Lenz, who does videos on my channel from time to time, he's done a lot of Infinity painting, and it's been really cool stuff. There's another guy that I know, kind of local, that lives down in the Milwaukee area. It's Tommy Back. I can't think of the name. Studio Omega. He's a painter, and I sadly cannot think of the name of his paint company off the top of my head. But just yeah, Tommy Back. If you look him up online, he does a lot of Infinity, and I feel like he goes into the slightly more kind of cartoony style, and it really makes those models pop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can imagine, because I think they're really suited for that for sure. Well, I think given the amount of time we have left on this show, I don't think we have enough time for another topic, but I would like to ask Adam one question. With all the stuff that you're involved with, as you were talking at the beginning of the show, and you're involved with so many different facets of the hobby, and in sort of like the YouTube channel, and now with work and this app, and there's so many things, and I know you're really into the hobby stuff, but I wanted to ask you about the gaming stuff, because I'm curious. You obviously like to game still, even though you said you're not a big tournament player, and with everything that you do, one, like, how do you find the time to game? And then two, when you do game, do you find there are any particular games that you have to like choose kind of one, so you feel like you're playing one regularly, that you, like that ownership of something that you kind of like to play? Like, do you go back to any particular ones on a regular basis?
Yeah. I mean, finding the time to play is a little bit more difficult. But it's, I do paint more than I play, and I do, hobby more than I play, but it's also, I can, go down in the basement and do 2 or maybe 3 hours on many given nights. Not many lately, because I've been a lot busier, but generally, yeah. And on weekends as well. But then a lot of times weekend gaming is frequently more what happens, at least for me. So yeah, I've been hopping around a bit lately, like between Age of Sigmar, Shadespire. Actually been really enjoying Shadespire. I haven't really played. For a while I was playing X-Wing with some friends, and I haven't really done that in a while. So it's been mostly Age of Sigmar and Shadespire, and I'm hopefully probably by the end of summer, I want to start playing 40K again. I mean, I can play, actually I'll be playing more frequently than that. I have a 1,500 point army, chaos army for 40K that's painted. I have 500 points sitting on my paint table right now that'll bring it up to 2,000, and they're primed and base coated and highlighted, and I need some more. It's 2 Hellbrutes and a unit of obliterators. And then that'll hopefully that should bring me back up. That should bring me up to 2,000 points. But then I also have a pretty much full 2,000 point Primaris Marine army that is all built, and their bases are all textured, and they've got fancy icons on their shoulders and all that kind of stuff that I got from Shapeways. And so they're ready to go. I'm probably not be able to even get primer onto them until after Adepticon maybe, but I'd like to, like I said, I want to get through them quickly. 2,000 points is not as many models as it used to be, you know what I mean? Which I really kind of like, honestly, and it could have been far less if I would have gone with like Grey Knights. 2,000 points can be like 17 models, you know what I mean? It's kind of surprising. And so I kind of like that. But yeah, as far as that's concerned, like there's other games I want to be able to do too, but it's, yeah, there's only so many hours in the day. I don't necessarily like to say, well, I'm only going to play this one game because I just really want to focus on this. So I do hop around, but I don't hop around a ton. Because, you know, and again, I think the benefit in my situation is that I'm just there to have fun. I'm not there to win, and I'm not trying to like practice for a tournament. I've got some friends that are going to be playing in a tournament this Sunday at this small convention in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. I'm going to, and they're going to be there playing on Sunday in the 40K tournament, and so they've been playing practice games, you know, for weeks and weeks and weeks and all that kind of stuff, and that's just, you know, that's not my thing. So I play the games that are fun. And if it's a game I haven't played in a while and I have to kind of, you know, relearn it as we go, that's part of the enjoyment to some degree, at least for me.
And it sounds like you've still focused on a few from what you're saying. I have heard a lot about Shadespire, and I have a regular gaming partner that talks to me about it all the time. I've not committed to get into it, but I've only heard good things though. Like actually, honestly, everybody I talk to says good things about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting game for Games Workshop, in my opinion, because it's definitely a gateway game. And it leans a little bit more board gamey than a regular miniatures game. I mean, you still have line of sight and range and that kind of stuff that you have to take into consideration, but you're playing it on a hex board, so there's no more of this, well, I think that you win an extra quarter of an inch. Well, I don't think I did, you know, that kind of stuff. And so it can be quicker. It can play quicker. It can be just generally, I think, I know that they're pushing it to be more of a competitive game. Like they want to be able to have organized events. It doesn't have to be played competitively, but because of the rule system and the way that it's a little bit more black and white than a normal game of, say, 40K, it can be played a little bit more competitively. It's quicker. I mean, it's smaller amounts of models. You know, my Stormcast aren't, you know, models that came with the game. There's like 3 of them in the box, and then there's like 5 of the Khorne Blood Reavers or Blood Bombs or whatever they're called. Like so far, the biggest force is the skeletons, and you have 7 guys in that box. Whereas like with orcs, I think it's 4. Even Skaven is less, I think, than the skeletons. So it's just it's kind of cool that they're putting things into it. It's allowing me to sit down and actually paint orcs for the first time. I've never painted orcs before, but you know, there'll be 4 in that box. So I want to, you know, I'm looking forward to doing those. I'm actually going to do a video about that. I'm going to be doing a hobby progress vlog talking about me doing those orcs, and so I'm looking forward to that.
Realistic painting orcs, right?
Well, I honestly, maybe a little bit, you know, like my first plan is, because they're in green plastic, but my first plan is to prime them with my airbrush and to use like a military drab as the primer. And that's going to be like the base skin color. And then I'm going to like highlight up from there and then go and do the armor. But I'm not going to do that yellow armor that you see in so many of the orc things. I'm going for either beat up metallic armor, or I'm going up with beat up metallic armor that looks like it's been covered in like, you know, black wash, and then a lot of it's scraped off at the edges through wear and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm looking at going in those situations. So yeah, they will be kind of realistic. It's going to be true.
Doesn't sound like they'll be like the Iron Jaws box art.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks for the answer. That's great. Yeah. I was curious about that.
Yeah, say with is it an orc player for 40K? Yeah, a lot of work that goes into them. We just had our was it, what, 3 months now, Palmer, that we had the old hammer.
Kind of joint project.
Yeah, we did a joint project, and I painted up, I think it was what, 60 or 70 Gretchen.
It was a lot. You did quantity.
Yeah. Not to mention, well, yeah, there was about 40. It was the old second. Remember the old second edition 40K box? I had at one time like 4 or 5 boxes worth of stuff out of those, and I've given them away just as like, oh, I can't stand. I'll never get around, so I just kept giving them away. And it's like, and then he had his little thing. It's like, okay, this is a great time to paint orcs. So I spent a month nothing but painting orcs so that I came green out of my ears.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah, I think that was the first box set that I ever bought, I think, was the second edition. That was the one where it was basically Ultramarines versus orcs, right?
Yes. That would be it.
Yeah, yeah.
I did
that was the first one.
I did the Orc Raiders metal box set from 1987 is the one that I did while he was doing that. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun just to do some painting projects of old Hammer style stuff too. It was kind of neat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I think we are over our normal hour. And so definitely thank you for coming on. Really a lot of great info. I'm actually also going on that tonight and looking for that app and going to install that. I'm very interested in that now. So, and you've actually, with the stuff that you've said, I actually watched some videos where you've talked about it, because I know you've more than once on your own videos you've talked about it. But there were some things you said tonight and after the questions that definitely taught me a bit more about it as well. So,
well, good. Yeah, I'm glad. Like I said, we've been doing, like, up to this point, like I said, we launched, at Christmas, and then I've only mentioned it on my channel a couple of times. So now we're actually starting to get more, the marketing stuff. And so it's been good to tell people a little bit more as we're able. So, yeah.
Great.
All right. So we're going to close out here. And it's been great having you on, Adam. Great
Thanks
talking with you. Talking about your app and just talking gaming. And that's what we normally do on our show, is that we just like to talk about game stuff. It's like we're sitting around a table or BSing across the table, throwing dice at each other. So,
right.
So, all right, folks, another great one. And we'll see you out there the next time. It'll be about 2 weeks. And if you want to come on to the show and talk with us, or if you have anything you want to talk about, any type of game or anything like that, just come on and drop us a line, and you can come on and be just like anybody else. All right.
Cheers, everybody. See you, Adam.
Thanks.